Right off the top, a big thanks to our sponsor, Economical, for bringing us this session. And a big thanks to our guest, Alena Kharkavets from Brokerlink. So just a quick introduction. She's the Vice President of Strategy and Consumer Experience at Brokerlink. Alena started her career as an actuarial at Intact and has since then held progressive positions in corporate development, sales strategy, and has a passion for modernizing the broker experience and, more importantly, the customer experience when it comes to insurance. So here to discuss some roadblocks and how to make a better customer experience for everyone, Alena Kharkavets.
Thanks very much. Maybe we can pull up the slides as well. I really look forward to engaging in a conversation with the folks attending. I know we have a really good group representing different geography and different roles. Really look forward talking about digital roadmap with you. Thomas, I'm wondering if you can help pull up the slides for us. I prepared just a couple slides to help us as visual as well. And we'll get going.
Second, we're going to pull them up here.
Thanks very much.
Oh, so there you go, Alena. So I think everyone can see them. And if you just give us a heads up, we'll knock over to the next slide whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thanks.
There we go.
Thanks. So I'm here today to share with you our journey. I've been with Brokerlink now for over 8 years, and it has been, definitely on the brokerage side. There's so much conversation about transformation and digital, and it's really exciting times. I have what we call, 3-7-3, 3 elements that were key to our success. 7 elements of sort of our roadmap, and then 3 lessons learned that I want to share with you. And I hope it's going to be useful to both brokers who are frontline and really want to get involved in digitization, and also principles, because I hope we can compare some notes, and it's a very collaborative industry. So I hope we can engage in a conversation. Before we get going, just to help me better tailor the presentation and get a sense of the folks in the room, I'd like to do a quick poll. So if we can just pull up the poll, and if you wouldn't mind asking this question for your shop. So whether you're a brokerage, I know we have a few insurance companies as well. How far along are you on your digital transformation journey? And sort of there are 4 camps. Haven't started. At times it feels overwhelming. We have been at it for a while. We feel really good about it, or we feel we are fully digitized. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking one of those 4 answers, will give us a good snapshot of who we have in the room today. Well, maybe I'll share the results. So we have close to, we have 27 responses. We have a couple folks who haven't started. And what I would say is, don't worry, because hopefully you'll walk away with a couple of useful tips. And that's how I felt 3 years ago. We have a really good mix in Camp B and C. We have a few folks who feel at times at times it feels overwhelming. So that's 25%. A really good representation in Camp C. We feel really good about it. That's really awesome to hear. And we have 2 responses. We feel we are fully digitized. To these folks, I'll say congratulations. And hopefully you can share some of your tips with us today. 35 responses overall. So this gives me a good idea of whom we have in the room. Thanks for your responses. So with this in mind, maybe we can go to the next slide, and I'll kick us off. For Brokerlink's roadmap, for us, we had essentially 3 elements when we kicked off our journey 3 years ago. And, just to give you a perspective, we've created a digital team, and it was pretty much 3 years ago when I walked into an office of my boss, and I sat down and we were talking about the plan for our first year. And I had a double-digit number in mind. for our sales target, because let's be honest, it's all about sales and growing our business. And so I kind of suggested it to him, and I thought it was a stretch objective. And then he looked at me and he pulled out the napkin and he literally thought for a second, and he wrote down the number and he handed to me that napkin. And I looked at it and I almost fell off the chair, because at that time, it was more than double of the number I imagined for year one. And my number was already a stretched goal. And here we are today, 3 years later, and going through the plan again for next year. And the goal that I have submitted is 9 times more than the original number I had in mind when we kicked off the journey 3 years ago. So there is definitely a case for digitization and digital transformation. It was really interesting to hear from early conversation. I know there was a discussion about, economies of capabilities, economies of scale. How do you grow organically? How your strategy fits what you are doing. And I would say for us, for Brokerlink, digital roadmap has certainly delivered on the results. It's very important for our organic growth. And it really sort of was focused on these 3 elements I've put up here. The first one is about bringing digital leads. You have to attract customers digitally. And we will talk a little bit about the digital customer as well. The second one is about having a digital platform. And I'll share with you sort of what that meant for us. And the third one is having a dedicated digital team of brokers who sell and also service the customer. For us, now it's a team of over 200 brokers nationally, and we have seen a lot of success from having a dedicated team, while also, staying committed to local presence. It's very important to have the focus, and I'll touch on this a little bit as well. For the purposes of the presentation today, and given the poll, we have a lot of folks in Camp C. What I intend to do is actually spend most of my time, I'll do a little bit of a brain hack here and spend most of the time on number 2, digital platforms. It's the area where I feel everyone had a little bit of a different journey, and everyone, based on the survey, it sounds like everyone feels pretty good where they are, but I feel there is so much more that needs to be accomplished. So I'll spend most of my time on number 2, and then I'll touch on number 1 and the digital customer, and number 3, and then I'll talk about the lessons learned as well. Sounds like a good plan, okay plan. By the way, please feel free to use the chat function, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there as well. With this, let's dive into our digital roadmap. So for Brokerlink, we've started 3 years ago, and not a surprise. It's just like when you're, making a pizza, there are certain elements you want to put there, or when you're doing a house renovation, right? Okay, I need to fix kitchen and the bath, and, you have certain elements. And the way we've approached our roadmap, it has really, what were those building blocks we need to put in place in the period of 2 to 3 years to get us going? And I think it's important to make a distinction. In earlier roundtable, there was a discussion. Are you a small brokerage or are you a large brokerage? What is your strategy? Are you a specialty player, niche, or are you sort of more personal lines focused in a metro center? And what I would say for us, we're in over 200 communities, and we are very proud of our local presence. With our digital journey, it was very important for us that it is a continuation of our, what Brokerlink has been delivering for 30 years in communities. And that's sort of how we approached it. I think, for many, it's like you can start digital from scratch, or you can say, okay, it's the extension. For us, it has all been about the extension of our business model. I'll touch on sort of our year 1 mandate and then year 2 and 3. The hardest thing, to be honest, was simply to get going. And when you start, or when you even are, right now, there's certain things you need to know. But if you're like me, you probably get 15 sales calls or sales emails a day. There are so many technologies out there. And the key is really to sort of just stay focused and tackle a couple of elements at a time and keep going. For us, we had a website that hasn't been touched for a period of time. And that made my job easier in a way, because we had a Sasquatch, this big Yeti in the front page, and the coding experience has been pretty sort of, it's kind of in a form, and it hasn't been touched for some time. And that made the job sort of easy in terms of let's get going, because it was very clear we need to redesign the website. No matter what you embark on, I think you need to have guiding principles, and you need to know what is the identity of your brand and how that identity projects on digital space. And so for us, as I mentioned, the website needed to be the sort of online gateway to our brokerage, but it needed to be the extension, and needed to have really strong sort of, it needed to be simple, but we needed to project we are really, really local, because it's the extension of our local branches as well. And I would say getting going on this website redesign has delivered really beautifully, very quickly on a bunch of things. One of them is digital Brokerlink identity. Simple things like adding a color that, in the print, you never need to think about, how certain colors look, but in digital, colors look different. So you need to make sure your font and your colors kind of, look the part. From things like, what is your message? From things, and for us, being local was very important. So if you go to our website, we spent a lot of time making sure that all our locations have a page, and there are photos from them, and they write their own stories, because in the end, it also helps you, first of all, being more local, but then also with Google as well, with Google rankings. And the third thing, it gets the culture going. And I think for us, we very quickly realized we need to have a digital team working with projects. And we really put together folks. We had several brokers who said we're trying to portray now, this experience digital. We had technology people. I went out of my way to find a journalist, and there was a lot of conversation about talent. I looked at over 800 profiles to sort of headhunt that journalist, and what a difference she made. And when we had those discussions about how we are going to approach the website, it's very interesting to see, because you have people who are very visual and like, I don't want text, I don't want numbers, and you have people who are more technical, like, oh, I need something a little bit more meaty. And through this push and pull and having people of different backgrounds, very quickly you iterate, and it really sets the stage. For us, it set the stage not only for the first 3 years of our roadmap, but also for the continuation. I think everyone probably had something similar. But for us, that's how it was. And I think what kept us focused is this hashtag real people. We used it a lot to say, this is what applies to us and this is what doesn't. And actually, I want to see in the chat if you have your own hashtag as well that you used for your own digital transformation or for your journey. There was this idea, we'll do 2 gift cards for $50 for coffee shop because everyone likes coffee or tea. And if you type your hashtag, I'm curious, what are the hashtags? This would be one of the 2 gift cards. If you have had a hashtag that you used for your roadmap, please type it in the chat. So for us, this real people has really been very, very, it helped us add focus, basically. The one thing with website that I'll also highlight is this whole notion of accessibility. If you talk to people like, who cares, maybe, is it, people just say it's a compliance thing. We believed that digital is the extension of local, and we actually literally worked with people who did not have very good maybe eyesight, or they had some other things that they've experienced the online a bit differently, and we asked them to test our website. And we implemented things like, they said, oh, this looks really blurry, your map looks really blurry, or I cannot click, or this clicking here is not intuitive. And I think this notion of basically, working with people, even people who may experience things differently. Like if you look at brokers make insurance accessible, and that's what we've been doing for generations. For us, the website needed to be that extension. And so that hashtag real people was really important, but also working with people who can help guide us on how they experience the website so that we can make the website much more accessible was a priority for us. So maybe the first thing, and I know we have a few folks in the audience about just 35%, just over 35% who are at the beginning of their journey. So a third of the audience, you're just working through your brand will really help you create a lot of guiding principles you need that sort of will serve as an anchor for your journey. I'll touch briefly on the other couple of elements that were key for us in the first year. Quoters, quite obvious. Everyone thinks quoters. I think for us, for auto and home quoter, again, it was about using new principles to design them, knowing that it's not going to be a buy online offer on day one. If it were a buy online offer, we would have approached things differently. But we knew in the first year, it was all about getting as many leads as possible, capturing those leads, and basically working with the customer, keeping them warm and then engaging with them. And so we wanted to make the experience as simple as possible, but also not push people away with things like, let's enter the driver's license, or let's basically not have we introduced something that's called an accuracy meter, and it really helped us with the customer engagement. So because we knew it's about capturing the customers' sort of information and working with them, the number one complaint I've heard from brokers is that the premium is not accurate. You complete a quote, the premium is not accurate, please fix these questions or gather more information from the customer. But we all know the customers don't really enter information perfectly, and they forget and what have you. And so we just said, fine, we'll just acknowledge it. And we'll say it's 70% accurate by the time you complete a quote, 80% accurate, depending on the information they provide. But you can get an idea of a premium with just 3 questions, but that's only 30% accurate. And we found that kind of an approach really resonated very well with our sales team, because now they could approach conversation with a customer in a very different way and really take them through the sales cycle and conclude with getting the contract, basically. So it has been really, really good from that perspective. So I think, from your quote, like these principles, is it for you about the most accurate, or is it a quote, or is it for you about capturing the leads, really being clear on where you are in your journey? That has been very helpful for us in all of this. And of course, you want your quotas to be simple. You want your quotas to be personalized. Of course, you want it to be like a text solution, and questions served one at a time. And I think, with our quotas, we've seen quite a bit of success because customers complete it with quite a lot of ease. And then they call on us, can I talk to Brianna, the broker? And Brianna is the broker who was on the quota. So when you hear from your sales teams that customers are asking for Brianna, even without the numbers, that the engagement is there. And then the numbers back it up. So I would say these couple of elements really anchored us in the first year. I'll briefly mention lead management and also, automated follow-up. It's one of those things that, when I talk to other peers in the industry, other brokers in the industry, many brokers have lead management and many brokers don't. Many brokers have dedicated teams and maybe still don't. In our experience, introducing a lead management tool has been very transformative for the sales team. They all have their own Excels, they all have their broker management system. And at that time, it was an extra system, which no one really wants. However, when brokers see the leads and the leads are, here's your hot lead, and there's a little fire, and here's your cold lead. And they can work with it without clicking through multiple times, several screens deep. If they can work off one screen, they are really, really engaged. And we actually had to create guiding principles for them, so that someone doesn't hoard the leads too much, because they found great success in following up with leads. Our biggest concern was we don't necessarily want brokers to call out on too many leads until we have really good scoring in place. And in the early days, it was about here are all the leads, and it's just hot, warm, cold, very, very basic. But we discovered that if you give a simple tool to brokers, it really then, they take care of the rest, and they know who is a fake lead, or who is they're unlikely they're not going to be successful, or who has a good chance of success. So even if you don't have very sophisticated lead scoring algorithms yet, talent, right? In the first session, people talked about talent over and over. Brokers are talent. And if you have, they know very quickly where to follow up or not, but the tool needs to be simple. So definitely the lead management tool is something I'll encourage if you don't have it yet. It's very straightforward. And the email marketing is another very foundational piece. It's basically our thinking was we don't want to pay for lead to Google multiple times or through advertising multiple times. If we have a lead, if customers found us organically or someone referred or through advertising, we want to keep that lead. And we also didn't want the brokers to do too much follow-up when technology exists today to do that. So that was another very important thing for us in year one to implement. So in year one, I felt that we really had good momentum, and that's sort of how we started. And I would say it gave a boost of confidence to the team and also to the organization. That's the right momentum. And let's keep investing in it. We see traction, we see results, we see better conversion, we see happier brokers and happier customers. With all these learnings, let's keep investing into it. And that was year one. With this, I'll switch to maybe year 2 and 3. It was a 3-year journey. And I actually simplified it even further. There's an element of self-serve, and then there's a lot of conversation on APIs and buy online in the industry. So I'll touch on all 3 of these aspects. The chatbot was a really interesting proposition for us. I know there are lots of portal solutions, and the adoption is different depending on kind of whom you ask. With us, where we have portal with one of our carriers, adoption is really high. 2/3 of our customers use it. We see it. But we also know customers don't necessarily like the login process that much, and they like information at their fingertips. And still, in many customers, there's this culture, I still prefer to submit the information. And sometimes there still needs to be a phone call. And so for us, the chatbot implementation, and it's an AI-powered chatbot, was the answer for that stage of our journey. The implementation has been pretty simple. It has been a couple of months in the summer. We actually had a broker who is now a chatbot manager, Tishon, manage it. And then we had a summer student from he studied space engineering and he joined us for the summer. What are the odds? So it was a perfect project for him. It was a lot about workflow from the customer side, but it was also a lot about learning. So once you've implemented, here are your options for the customers. Can you contain the conversation, and can the customer really get the information they're looking for? Very quickly, we discovered, even without advertising our chatbot, that our chatbot was generating, more than 500 conversations a week in early days, which was really good sort of indicator that our customers engage with it. And we also very quickly discovered that the customers like to go through the whole journey, and their satisfaction is pretty good for the transactions, even if they are basic transactions. So for us, the chatbot has proven to be very valuable for customer inquiries. It's interesting because the other day the team was sharing with me, a conversation from one of our customers, and the bot actually recognized her, and she's like, "Oh, I'm looking for gives you an option, pink slip," and the bot said, "Oh, and is it Victoria?" And it's like, "Yes," and so she didn't have to repeat any other information, which was kind of neat, because that's what you would hope, that you implement all these technologies, and that they work for you not only on day one, but also a year from now and 2 years from now, and you keep evolving. So it's really cool to see when there is traction. So the chatbot, and I know there are different answers to self-serve, but for us, initially, it has been a really effective tool. And what I would say is I quite envision it evolving, because, and as I'll talk in a moment, there's a lot of conversation about APIs and things like that, and connecting with carriers or, with your BMS. There are lots of ways to solve for it. And I think that can be one of the avenues, how customers look for information. And last but not least, the buy online offer. And I know there is in the audience, based on the results of the poll, we have quite a few folks, I'm sure, who have some version of buy online in place already. In our experience, and I kind of talked about these building blocks. So with every project we looked at, it was important to have building blocks, and every building block, then once you have it, you keep reusing it. Tech people use this fancy term, technical debt. You don't want to incur technical debt. You want to keep reusing what you've built. So kind of the way we approach is like, what are the foundational building blocks? What are the next building blocks? And then how do we build from there? So the buy online for us, and I know in the industry, there are quite a few buy online options. There is basically typically some sort of manual intervention at the back. We discovered that it was much easier to implement what I, for simplicity, call programs. And that has been our first buy online. By programs, I really mean in commercial lines, you have a lot of simple programs. You issue a certificate and it's done, and it's very, very quick. And you, as a broker, you have the rates. So it's very easy for you to program. You don't really need an intermediary. You don't need to connect with a carrier. And so it's very easy for you to implement. And of course, if you have if you're working with Lloyd's, you can have also tenants insurance and things like this. Again, much easier to program because you, as a broker, have rates. So for us, the buy online implementation was sort of the first, and it was in commercial lines, our first one. And it was all about sort of the building blocks. it was pretty cool to see, because within a month there were 1,500 policies that went through it, and they were issued online, and it was really kind of, very rewarding for the team. But from my perspective, where I sit, it was just basically really good to have this as a building block, because once you've done it for one program or for one tenant's buying online, you have a kind of blueprint of how to replicate it. And so then your velocity becomes much, much, much faster, much better, right? And then the number seven, I think this is for the broker community and for the carrier community, probably the biggest opportunity. There are a number of carriers. I know this session is sponsored by Economical. They have their, API journey. There are a number of others. Anissa is a great partner of ours. There are lots of companies who are working on APIs, making APIs available. And I think that's going to be, that's where the bulk of innovation will come from in the next 24, 36 months. For us, implementing the first carrier API has been a really interesting experience, because it's different when you have to work with another company. Your partner might be doing testing, then you are doing testing, and then your insurance carrier also needs to do extensive testing, because right now there are still not that many companies or brokerages that do a lot of APIs, and it's sort of new for insurance carriers as well. So for me, again, in terms of building blocks, having monthly credit card pay option, connecting with carriers directly for APIs, are the building blocks that we have focused in kind of the first leg of the digital journey. So these are sort of 7 elements. I know the menu can look a bit different for everyone. I'd love if you share your challenges in the chat at the end. But for us, the biggest challenge was we kind of knew what elements need to be in place, but it was really just getting going and setting up the right culture, the right guiding principles, so that we are successful in our transformation. And then once you have early wins, then this can support your organic growth objectives, as it has supported ours. And so then, that means more resources, and it's the right area to invest. So we've talked about the 7 steps for digital journey. That's sort of the meaty part, if you will, of kind of transformation. And as I said, I think, for us now, we're looking the next 2-3 years. What are those building blocks? How to build on the existing building blocks and that sort of thing. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about now number 1 and number 3. So just like, in any brokerage sort of, you have, or sandwich, right? Like you have the filling, and that's for us, digital platforms. It was like lots of flavors. How do you approach it? But then the top layer and the slice of the bread at the bottom, how do you bring in leads? And how do you actually then, once they are there and they've gone through your online experience, how do you convert them into, so that they're long-term customers with you, basically? With respect to digital leads, and when I talk to brokers in the industry, quite often, roughly, if you look at growth on the organic side, plus minus maybe a third of business comes from referrals, right? And we all know referral customers, and brokers love getting referrals. They have really high conversion. About a third comes from cross-sell and sort of different initiatives. And typically the rest, just, a third or so, just over a third, comes from advertising efforts. So if brokers invest more in advertising, they might grow higher, but then it costs more money. And the cost, if they invest a little bit less, then maybe there's a little bit less growth. But then, you don't maybe spend as much on advertising. And of course, what we've seen over the past 5-10 years is the shift to digital. To this day, I hear a lot, and I wonder if those, in the audience see it as well. I hear a lot this notion of the digital customer. Who is the digital customer? And what do we do with the digital customer? And there is still skepticism. There is still, I'm not sure about the digital customer. And what I'm going to share with you is what we found. And once you set up sort of a digital team, you can actually really look at demographics and, renewal pattern, how many times customers call. What we have discovered is that, especially in Ontario and Alberta, the digital customer is very similar to the customer that comes through traditional advertising. And by the time next couple of sentences, I'll explain why, and then you'll see why. Some of the things we have looked at is demographics. And there's this perception, digital customers, very young, and also there's, it's highly skewing, they're more non-pace and things like this. When we looked at our Ontario and Alberta customers and sort of compared, we're now over 200 communities, and we also are digital, so we can really benchmark internally customers that come through advertising locally or customers who come through digital channels. We can benchmark, it's on the same basis. What we have discovered is that in terms of age, and we used, under 35 or 35 plus, in terms of digital customer, about half of our customers who come digitally are over age 35, and there is really good spread. And when we look at branches and our traditional advertising, it's actually maybe a couple more points. It's higher, but it's not significantly higher. And so we've discovered the digital, yes, it slightly skews younger, but it's to a magnitude of maybe 5%. It's really relatively small. And I'm talking about Ontario and Alberta specifically. So in terms of demographics, it looked quite similar. And then we said, okay, fine, demographics, but what about the renewal pattern? What about transiency? People shop more and all things like that. And what we discovered when we looked at the renewal rate within the first year, and, renewal rate for digital customer doesn't get a good rep, but I think it's because it's often mixed with the traditional book, and then it's really hard to look at characteristics. But what we've discovered is that, yes, it is a couple of points higher, but it's only a couple of points higher than if you look at new business that comes through traditional advertising, your churn rate within the first year. So, it's really not significantly different. And so, and I mentioned Ontario and Alberta is because in Atlantic, actually, the pattern is a bit different. And so I will focus on Ontario and Alberta in terms of our insights. So fundamentally, when we look at demographics and when we looked at renewal rates in personal lines, we've discovered that digital customer is very similar to traditional customer. And I think that was sort of a really big aha for many of us. And when we work with carriers, in earlier session, people said, we really need to form partnerships with carriers, and you have to have good controls and all that sort of thing. When you show metrics, it kind of speaks for themselves, and people become more comfortable investing and supporting you on your digital journey. With respect to digital leads, driving traffic, and I know there is, paid search, there's organic search, but for brokers in the audience, work on Google reviews. Not going to spend much time there, but for us, let's say if you look at the Toronto, we have broker Alex who just sends a link to everyone who does a sale with him, and he's like, please, leave me a review, good or bad. And now so many customers call him. But we also, I want to talk to Alex, but also it really helps with Google rankings as well, right? So paid search, I think it's a big decision for principals, how much money you want to invest or your marketing advertising. But on a really individual level, once you define your strategy, Google reviews and reviews in the online space is a very kind of worthwhile investment. So bringing leads, that's briefly that. And the bottom part of the sandwich, I know we're getting to the lunch very soon, is really having a dedicated sales team. cannot emphasize enough the value of it and really creating a dedicated team for digital leads. I believe we have a few brokerages who are purely digital who are here today. So, for them, it's not going to be, they've designed it like this already. And we have a few brokerages who are sort of on this transition. For us, having a dedicated team that worked online leads produced several advantages. One of them is actually the team, branch brokers who are local tend to have this mindset, I can only write local, even though they're licensed in the entire province, and they feel much more comfortable to write locally. But once you have a national team and, provincial team, and brokers they don't have, they can write across the province, and it really extends the reach of your brokerage. And once they've shown the way, they've paved the way, it's easier for the rest of your organization to evolve as well, which has been the case in our case. So it kind of removes the bias about the digital customer or also just, being provincial in presence because of licensing. You want that. It also, the workflow is different, right? So the close ratio on web leads is lower than the referral close ratio. It's just, it's harder to scale referrals. So, and the workflow is different. Likely there's the lead management system that might or might not be different, but also, the follow-up process. So if you want to be successful, it needs to be managed. And again, you want a dedicated focus there if you are serious about this. And then the third thing, I would say, the team has actually kind of piloted a lot of things for us. For example, telematics. We've been an early adopter of telematics. One of our carriers, Intact Insurance, was the first one to have telematics. And, today, 65-70% of new business we sell has telematics in it. Brokers have conversation with the customer, and then, telematics is a good program. And because you have this team where you can pilot programs like this, it kind of helps with adoption across the board in other regions and with other teams. That's what we've seen. And because we created internally this muscle early on, now Travelers rolled out telematics, Pembridge rolled out telematics, and we are one of the kind of high adopters of those. And it really helps us with new business because, let's be honest, insurance is expensive. And so if your brokers know how to explain the program and they embrace it, it's a great new business tool. It's a great retention tool. And we've seen that having a dedicated team allows you to have a little bit of a lab, proves things work, and then help with adoption in the rest of the organization. So enough about modernization sort of elements, bring leads, digital platforms, dedicated sales team. I'll spend a couple moments on sort of what have we learned. And it's really three things, I would say. The first one is the notion of culture. I cannot emphasize enough this notion bias for action. And we got going on this, and it brought design thinking into our process right away. We very quickly realized, okay, we need to organize in these 2-week sprints. We need to bring different perspectives. Imperfection is okay. It's okay if your product is not perfect. You just need to get going, and you need to be organized in this madness. And this is where things like design thinking and, the notion of also agile development from technology side come in and are very, very helpful. For us, it was so interesting because we've started with digital products, and it was all about feedback and let's get this information, let's get going. But then we realized that's very helpful for the rest of the organization as well. So one of our brokers, Sylvia, she is now the manager with digital. We sent her to a 2-day course for design thinking. She came in, she did it for digital first. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, how about we become paperless in the office? And that was pre-COVID. Now everyone is paperless. But some of our, she brought brokers who are 20 years experience with us, right? Like really some brokers who've seen it all and very paper focused. And so this print, and there was a suggestion, let's just unplug the printer. Like it was sort of that extreme. But because you bring people along and you get their feedback, all of a sudden your digital roadmap allows you to innovate in other processes and simplify them. And this paperless sprint proven to be very handy because it was in 2019 before COVID hit. So I think your digital transformation can help you quite a bit with your other programs, but culture is not to be underestimated. It's different from traditional ways. It really is. What is the broker's future? I get this question in early days. I got it a lot from my brokers. And if you're a broker, if you're a principal, you probably get it from your teams. Or if you're a broker, you probably also kind of wonder how technology will evolve the role of brokers. For me, it's a bit mind-blowing that we still have situations where sales process, if you sit down with a sales broker, there are like 7 systems open. You need lead management and sometimes ARS and the PMS and this and that. And to be honest with you, customers value advice. If you do a quick search on Google for car insurance, 1.4 million results pop up in just over a second. 1.4 million results for car insurance, right? If you're looking for it. And I think, the value of advice is going to be there. The admin part is where technology can help. So the way I think about buy online, it will help simplify simple things, and where customers are ready to do it themselves. It only creates more time for valuable conversations. And when I talk to my frontline brokers, they all say, look, we'd love to talk to a customer about this and that and that. But the reality of it, sometimes there's too many work with kind of admin stuff. And so the technology will really help brokers deliver on what they why they chose this as a career. And the third thing is customer. So for me, self-serve, for basic needs, it's sort of table stakes, buying online, and having your digital being the extension of your what brokers have been doing for generations. It's kind of all common sense. I think we should be, again, like there's this notion, and I quite believe in it, that 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we might be in a position where for some products we'll ask only 5 questions, and these 5 questions, some of them might be really for cross-sell, because a lot of this you can kind of approximate through a lot of other data sets that are available there, or just reusing the information you have about the customer. The customers want simplicity. The customers want the Sonnet experience in a broker world. And I think for brokerages, it's very imperative that we embrace this customer centricity. And we are not shying away, and we're basically committing to the transformation journey. Based on the results of the poll, I think lots of people who are here today are there. And I think they recognize the significance of it. And I think it takes sometimes a village to modernize the insurance. And I think brokers have really kind of a big role to play in the future. So for me, the 3 lessons, if I reflect, it's really, or if I were to say a call to action, in terms of culture, if you've been thinking about something, get going, get into the action mode, bias for action, just get going on this is probably the biggest takeaway. And then it's about continuing to embrace technology. With this, I'll open up for questions. This has been Brokerlink's journey. I also kind of would say, if you want to get in touch, my coordinates are there. Would love to hear your stories and just wonder what your journey and experience has been, because I think it will take a village for us to modernize brokering in Canada.
Great presentation. Oh, there we go. Now I'm turned on. Just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. We're going to start off with some questions, and the first one is from Ryan out of Ontario there. So his question is, what is your definition of fully digitized?
It's a really great question because when we define digital, people mean so many different things. For me, customer needs to be able to do lots of transactions by themselves without brokers' involvement. Would be fully digitized. There's no human touch in between. It's simply that. Customers seeing the same information as broker, and broker is there to provide advice.
Awesome. And then I had a quick question for you. So you were nice enough to share us kind of steps 1 to 7. I was curious, has Brokerlink started thinking about steps 8, 9, and 10 yet? And would you be willing to kind of give us a sneak peek?
I would say it's a lot about the APIs. It's a lot of, and I would say it includes technology, but it also includes product innovation. Our tenants buy online implementation. When we were going through this for the first time, my team basically documented the current process. There are 93 questions in the tenants application, 93. Obviously, you can automate a lot through pre-fill, but some of them don't really apply. And I think there is the technology piece that will help customers and brokers, but then there is the product piece. And we need to be advocates for customers. And I think that will enable innovation. That's very much inside, what's inside for us.
Nice. I appreciate you giving us a little bit of a sneak peek. And then I have one more question here is, you kind of mentioned a lot about staff and having a digital focused team. I'm just curious, do you hire a lot of outside resources to join your digital team, or do you do a lot of cross training with the brokers you already have access to?
So there's the digital broker team, and then there's the digital team who helps us with the roadmap. For the team that does the roadmap and technology, we find a good balance is really important. You need technology people, and you need people. We work with a boutique firm in our web development who have been proven to be a really amazing partner. And our tech department helps us with security and all sorts of things like that, and building a bunch of things as well. You need the broker at the table as well, because brokers who embrace digitization, like Tishon I mentioned, they have seen a lot of situations on the phone, and now they're saying, hey, if we connect like this is going to be the customer kind of input, and here's how you can do it better. So the balanced team is really important, and I find there's a lot of opportunity for brokers to be part of this digital journey.
Yeah, I think and a great opportunity to like cross-train and help retain some of the brokers you already have, right?
It becomes a great career path. Like our chatbot, it becomes a really great career path, and the brokers are invaluable.